Hi, it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy, back with another complicated update about the Justin Baldoni Blake Lively lawsuit that's not at all about it ends with us almost anymore. It's very little to do with it anymore. It's so complicated. So lots has been happening and lots to catch up on. But I think possibly the thing that's a bit frustrating for a lot of people is we kind of seem to still have this feeling that Blake kind of just seems to get what she wants, and whenever Team Baldoni seem to get like a little bit of something, it's always like in part it's denied, in part it's approved, which feels a little bit frustrating. And as a non-legal expert, I can't say whether that is normal or not, but it certainly feels a little bit frustrating. And I know some people feel there's still that thing of he's only doing enough to seem partisan, to seem like he's being fair. So he gives a little, but then kind of the next thing you feel like Blake gets a whole wallop, doesn't she? And gets a whole like slab of things going her way. And we continue to see Blake's tactics in this idea of she has something approved or she agrees to something, even when it's stamped by the judge, and then next don't know why my voice is going, next thing the scope has changed. And this is something she does, and it's happened now to the two tag employees. I believe one's former and one's current, Case and Butler Koslow. That's them, into Katherine Case and Breanna Butler Koslow. I'm trying to do it without looking at notes. But yeah, I feel really sorry for those girls because they're, non-parties to this thing. They probably don't truly understand why they've been dragged into it. They've kind of been targeted, really. So they kind of were compelled to agree to a set date to produce contents from the devices, I guess, as much as anything. So there was an agreement about that. So they did what they were expected to do. They contacted Blake's attorneys, got the details of the vendor who was going to extract the information, and these forensic specialists or whatever they are. And I believe they've had firstly Blake's team insisted on it being like on the premises, so it couldn't be done remotely. So these people had to make themselves available, and they had to be available at the time the vendor was available too. So all of this information has been taken but has yet to have been processed. And in the meantime, as they generally do, Blake and Ryan, because we know he's involved in this, don't we? So they've changed the scope again. They've changed the search terms. They've broadened them. There's a whole raft of search terms that basically pull in everything that's ever been commented to do with this. I would say both during this case and prior to this case that might have ever been mentioned in relation to Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and the other things. So these poor women have had to ask for an extension, and put it out there that they've done the best in terms of what they can do. But until this information is processed, until they can sit down with opposing counsel and determine what they will both agree to in terms of search terms, which we know Blake will not want to give over on any of the search terms that she wants to have. So yeah, that is going on, which must be entirely frustrating for those involved. I mean, it must be so stressful for those women to have been dragged into this and to be having to go through this. And I can imagine having somebody rifle through your messages and things like that. It's such an intimate thing, isn't it? I can imagine that's quite traumatic. And so the old Vanzan of it all was still, and this is where the judge has kind of denied in part because it's moot, and compelled in part too. So they're not getting around the fact that Vanzan have to produce everything that is between Vanzan and Jones Works or any agents thereof. So anybody either that's working for Vanzan, that's on shareholder whatever, attorneys, whatever it is, agents of them, any communications between them and the same thing on the Jones work side. They're not getting away with that. They're not getting away with that argument that they had that, oh, well, they should have got it from Stephanie Jones. They're not getting away with that. Judges said, no, just because they should be able to get it from her doesn't mean that they don't get to ask for it from you. So they are having to go ahead with that. And the other things that Jen had whittled down her requests for, they do have to, those were the things that the judge denied as moot because they have previously agreed that they will provide those. But I think most of us kind of think, are they really going to provide the genuine things? You know, is it really going to be what we all expect it to be? Or, you know, how far are people going to go in terms of possibly being deceitful? You know, how bad is this thing actually going to be? How much truth will we ever get to know? I think that remains to be seen yet, but at least we kind of had that semi-little win, if you like. So there's going to be no protective order for Jed Wallace's client base either now. So this is quite a worrying one, really, because you imagine the likes of Blake and Ryan getting hold of his client base and knowing who he's working with and knowing how he's worked with them. Can you imagine the power that that gives them? It's not about, to me, it's not even about this case, that. It's like the case is kind of just a side benefit to getting all of that information, I feel like. It's like, you know, can you imagine these people? They're probably going to make a movie out of it, aren't they, Blake and Ryan, at the end of this, because they love just lifting people's lives out of things. So I can imagine that there's already, like, there's Ryan in his writing cave or whatever he calls it, beavering away doing something about this. But you imagine whoever is on Jed Wallace's client base, Blake and Ryan are going to know who is on there and what's happened on their behalf. And the power of that is information is quite extraordinary, I think. So yeah, Jed Wallace cannot hide. He has to provide the details of his current client base so that Blake's side can investigate, have their analysts investigate his methods of working, I guess, and see if they can somehow tailor his past workings to their theory on this conspiracy of how he managed to do this untraceable campaign. So they get to have that. So this is what I'm kind of saying. We kind of get like a tiny bit and they seem to get big bit, don't they? You know what I mean? And like, not being a lawyer, I don't know how fair this is and I can't comment on all of that, but it's certainly entirely frustrating for many that are just watching it from an emotional perspective and feeling like an emotional bond with just inside of things and feeling that unfairness. It's like, it's interesting now as well, because Liner, Freedman, Tattleman and Cooley are now subject to a subpoena from Blake's side of things. And so California court, where Bryan raised this motion to quash, they're basically saying, we don't want to deal with it. I'm going to bounce it back to the people that are already dealing with things in New York. But they also kind of, I was going to say they said something a little bit strange, but that's literally what they said. When the kind of ruling came down about it, the judge kind of intimated that he found it strange that they'd not fully argued any reasons why it shouldn't go to New York, which that kind of makes you think, that's interesting, really, because why wouldn't Bryan fully argue against it going to New York unless he didn't mind it going to New York? So it's like the judge in California kind of says, well, you didn't really seem to be that bothered. You didn't really seem to fight that hard enough, which I find strange. The judge is what said. I find it strange. That were literally the words. So it looks like that's bouncing over to Judge Lyman as well. So will Judge Lyman really compel Liner, Freedman, Tattleman and Cooley to give over all of their inter-office dealings about this case and whatever else it was that they're asking for. Is that really going to happen? Because you would think surely not. Surely attorney-client privilege comes into it. You know, it's that thing of, is there anything that she asks for that is too much? You know, is there anything? The ego is insane, isn't it, really? That she really does believe, and Ryan really do believe, that there truly is nothing off limits when it comes to this. It is quite staggering to watch real narcissism in progress, and that's kind of what you're witnessing here. And it's quite weird, isn't it, that Perez Hilton is still absolutely saying that he hasn't been subpoenaed. But why would TMZ say Andy Signor had been subpoenaed, Candace Owens had been subpoenaed, and Perez Hilton had been subpoenaed, but Perez is still saying, no, I haven't had a subpoena yet. So what is that about? And now it's like, is Billy Bush going to have to be involved in too? Who's the other one? There's another one that's been threatened, isn't there, too? Or TMZ seems to suddenly, well, not even suddenly, seems to have a direct line to what Blake is doing. But, you know, it's still that thing, isn't it? That frustrating thing that Blake and Ryan are doing the exact things that they have a problem with just inside, allegedly, having done, that we haven't even proved they have done. Meanwhile, they've got like an open line to TMZ, much like Amber Heard had, allegedly, before. You know, and it's quite incredible that they're getting first dibs on it and still coming out and doing largely pro-Blake, you know, interviews, articles, whatever it is. And the other thing, of course, there's another thing that's, because I keep having to check my notes because otherwise I'll totally run out of what I was going to say. It's the other thing is that's on the go is the Leslie Sloane argument for having her expenses paid off. So again, Freedman and co have responded to that and basically say it again. It's this confusion over picking and choosing jurisdictions, and even between state and federal, because Leslie Sloane wants to make use of New York's anti-SLAPP legislation, and yet much of this case originated in California with the CRD, which is what brought Leslie Sloane into it in the first place, wasn't it? But she thinks just because there's been that 12B6 motion to dismiss that means, right, I've won, I get, even though the judge said at the time, this doesn't mean I'm awarding, you know, your expenses. She put in this motion to get her expenses, and Freedman and co basically responded saying, no, you can't just do that. You actually have to make a fresh lawsuit or a fresh complaint, whatever it is. So I guess they're hoping that she really won't want to have to do that, and that the judge will come down and say, yeah, if you want, you're going to have to make a brand new lawsuit if you want your expenses back, because she's going to have to prove that it was done maliciously or frivolously. As all of this case comes down to, is this malicious? Is this frivolous? Is this defamation? Was it a PR move? Because Wayfarer basically had to, they didn't, you know, I think we all truly believe that Justin never wanted to be in a lawsuit as such, but he felt like he had to defend himself. So him defending himself and going after Leslie and Team Blake and the rest of it, it wasn't frivolous from his perspective. So their argument is that she doesn't just get to have her expenses back because they were justified in trying to go after it, and the fact that it got dismissed doesn't mean it was without merit. It just meant it wasn't pled the best way possible. Doesn't mean that it wasn't, you know, completely without context, and certainly wasn't made up and the rest of it. So we've got to wait and see about that as well, to see what the judge will rule there. But I guess the danger, if she gets her expenses like that, it kind of is, it becomes like PR becomes like a protected thing, because it's like it's almost like saying, if you're in PR, you're able to say whatever you want about somebody and get away with it. And if they sue you and it gets dismissed, and you will get your expenses back, it's setting a precedent, really, that PR kind of gets to say and do whatever it jolly well likes, if you like. So I'm not sure how that one will go. But I think most of us genuinely think and hope that she doesn't get those expenses, because if she gets that, then I think that opens up Blake and Ryan to get their attorney fees back as well. And maybe that's what they're trying to do. Maybe, I mean, they are all colluding, aren't they? I'm pretty sure we think that. You know, even though she's calling Jones a co-conspirator at this point in time, Blake Lively, they've certainly seemed chummy enough in the past, haven't they? And I'm sure this is all being coordinated. So maybe they thought, we'll test the waters with Leslie, see if she gets hers back. Because, you know, then that's not them losing face, is it? It's not Blake and Ryan losing face if she doesn't get her attorney fees back. So that's basically, I think that's the bulk of what we're waiting on. There's probably things that I have missed. Let me just have a quick flip through my notes, but I think that's kind of what we're waiting for. Yeah, what the court stated about Freedman and that subpoena was that they were surprised that, or he found it strange, is what they said, didn't express any undue burden on them in transferring the motion to New York when they had the opportunity to do so. So that's what the court in California found quite strange. And that makes me think, oh, what's Bryan up to? Kind of in the background, you know, maybe there's something else going on there. And what's naughty about the Vanzan of it all that I've just remembered as well is a lot of what's going on is delaying tactics, because don't forget there's all those other motions to dismiss out there, and Vanzan is hoping that Jen Abel's case is dismissed, basically. And I think it was Without a Crystal Ball saying yesterday that even though it feels like Jen's got given a little bit of leeway in that Vanzan has to produce this Jones Works communications, we have seen that already, where it felt like we were getting somewhere, then next thing it got dismissed, you know. So it's kind of still a nerve-wracking position to be in. But I think that's it, or that's all I certainly had for the time being. I do find it interesting as to why Perez has not been subpoenaed at this point, unless they're waiting to see if they do get access to anything from Bryan Freedman, and whether they're going to try and pin Perez to Bryan, because he's openly said that he's I know he said a candidate of his, you know what I mean, a client of his. So yeah, I think that's where we're at. But yeah, very frustrating, very interesting, very fast moving, I would say it is at the moment. So what are you feeling about it all? Are you feeling a bit like, oh, we kind of give a little, get a little, and then like the other side just seems to change the parameters all the time? I'm still getting this sense that Team Baldoni is still flying very much under the radar. I feel like there's a lot that they're keeping quiet, and there's Blake's deposition obviously coming next week. And it's interesting, isn't it, in TMZ and that, it's like they're trying to present this, I would say, as, oh, this is another episode of how Blake stands up for women and girls, that she's, you know, it's almost as if they're trying to phrase this deposition as another opportunity for her to shine on the stage, isn't it, of her newfound position as the poster child for women's rights and feminism, and standing up for what's right against women, against men, and misogyny and all of the rest of it. So I'm a misogynist as well, aren't I? Because I'm kind of anti-Blake, I would guess. But I do feel like, yeah, they're kind of trying to boost up this deposition, not as in this is calling her into account. This is this is where we get the truth out of it. This is where we say, you know, we show you that film footage where you did at the, you know, the scene in the maternity where you said you only had a fig leaf basically over your private parts and nobody gave you anything to cover yourself with. This is, this deposition is where we start showing you the footage and we say, and we read back your words and say, what were you lying about there? Are you blind? What's going on here? Whereas her side and TMZ and whatever they're feeding to them is like trying to big her up as if she's like some knight in shining armor charging in with sword aloft to battle these band of misogynists that are after her basically, and stand and with an army of women and girls behind her. That's how they're kind of phrasing it, which is really quite a thing. Leslie Sloane rather is clearly, maybe Stephanie Jones as well, is clearly working really hard on her behalf still. But yeah, that's my thoughts for today. Please do hit that like and subscribe and share if you can. If you're enjoying it at all, please do comment below if you can, and hit the notification bell and just select to receive all. And you'll never miss a video if you don't want to miss a video. And thank you for watching to the end, because we know it makes all the difference. I will see you later. Bye bye.